For the past week, the disappearance of the Submersible has captured widespread attention, generating discussions across social media and extensive coverage in the press. So many celebrities have now weighed in with their thoughts on the tragedy. So in this video, we're taking a look at the top 10 celebrity reactions to the Titan submersible disaster. Starting us off in the number 10 spot is Kaley Cuoco. The actress shared her devastation at the harrowing news during the first few days of the rescue mission. She wrote on her Instagram story, quote, "This has kept me up the last few nights and made me sick, truly praying they can be saved. Can't imagine what the passengers are going through." As for the tragedy of the Titan, it's been reported that a catastrophic implosion is what caused the death of the 5 people on crew. As for the tragedy of the Titan, it's been reported that a catastrophic implosion is what caused the deaths of the 5-person crew. This horrific accident resulted in the loss of British billionaire Hamish Harding, Pakistani billionaire Shazda Dawood and his son Sulaiman, French diver Paul-Henri Nargeolet, and OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush. The vessel submerged on Sunday morning from its support vessel to travel to the Titanic wreckage, which sits at a depth of 12,500 feet. About an hour and 45 minutes later, the Titan lost contact with its mothership, the Polar Prince. It only takes about 8 hours to complete the entire trip, including a 2-hour descent and exploration. So when the craft failed to surface on Sunday afternoon, it was clear that something had gone horribly wrong. Experts said they should have been sending a signal out every few minutes, so the fact that there has been radio silence since was worrying right from the start. Next up at number 9, John Cusack. The actor echoed the criticism of many who are upset at the number of resources and money spent to save the billionaires on board, while some of the other tragedies at sea have gone largely under the radar and were not as well funded. Cusack tweeted, quote, "All I can think is refugees capsize, no one cares. Some billionaires on a joyride goes missing. It seems like multiple navies are instantly searching." Judging from the reaction to his post, it's safe to say that many felt the same way. At first, news that a submersible had gone missing during a voyage to the Titanic wreckage site ignited a wave of shock and concern. But as more details emerged about the wealth of those on board, like comments from the CEO that seemed to disregard safety, there was not as much empathy there. Instead, there was a flood of memes mocking the victims appearing across social media. OceanGate released a statement describing the 5 passengers on board as, quote, "true explorers who shared a distinct spirit of adventure and a deep passion for exploring and protecting the world's oceans. They said, our hearts are with these 5 souls and every member of their families during this tragic time. We grieve the loss of life and joy they brought to everyone they knew." Coming in at number 8, Cardi B. The rapper posted an Instagram video in response to Brian Zaz's outing at the Blink-182 show. He was the stepson of British billionaire Hamish Harding, who sadly passed away in the Titan tragedy. While the rescue mission was still ongoing, Brian posted a photo outside of a Blink-182 concert with the caption, quote, "It might be distasteful being here, but my family would want me to be at the Blink-182 show as it's my favorite band and helps me in difficult times." In response to the post, Cardi B put him on blast in a video of her own, where she said, quote, "People are like, what is he supposed to do? Be sad at the house? Is he supposed to go look for him himself? Yes, you're supposed to be at the house sad. You're supposed to be crying for me. You're supposed to be right next to the phone waiting to hear any updates about me." Brian then proceeded to slam Cardi B for her take. He took to Twitter and wrote, quote, "What a trashy celeb. Cardi B trying to get clout off of me and my family's suffering. I went to a Blink-182 concert for coping rather than sitting at home and watching the news. Shame on you, Cardi. Get some class." Coming in at number 7 is Nicki Minaj. On a recent episode of her Queen Radio podcast, the rapper shared her opinion on the breaking news story. She said, quote, "No one should be hopping themselves on a submarine talking about they going down to the Titanic. I'm keeping all 5 passengers in my prayers and wishing all the best to search and rescue teams. I just hope everyone stays safe." Since the news broke of the Titan submersive, many have expressed their shock and frustration at the fact that expeditions to the wreckage of the Titanic were possible in the first place. It also opened a broader conversation surrounding the dangers of extreme extreme tourism and the ethics of visiting such a place. In fact, relatives of people aboard the Titanic have said that tourist trips to the shipwreck site are disrespectful to those who perished in the disaster. They said that the wreckage should be treated like an underwater graveyard of the 1,496 who died, and not a Disneyland for adventure-seeking tourists. There's no doubt that modern adventure tourism ventures raise ethical questions, like should there be more regulation? And if so, who should set and enforce the rules? And are rescue operations even possible in some places extreme tourists are going? Coming in at number 6, Bethany Frenkel. The Real Housewives of New York City alum made a post on Instagram saying, quote, "Who gets into a submarine that's not Jacques Cousteau? You want to be adventurous? Drink 4 margaritas and see what happens. Try a bathing suit on without your underwear. Go to Burning Man dressed as a parakeet. I don't know. But going on a submarine, jumping out of airplanes, riding motorcycles, swimming with sharks, all of these things seem like a bad idea. And it's so tragic and so sad and so terrible. God bless those poor people." At the time of posting, the rescue mission was still underway. The massive search operation in the Atlantic Ocean was in an area twice the size of Connecticut. A glimmer of hope came on Tuesday and Wednesday morning when banging noises were identified by a Canadian aircraft. Remotely operated vehicle equipment was relocated to where the noises were detected, but so far, searches in those areas have not come through with any results. Apparently, the crew heard banging sounds every 30 minutes, which some interpreted to be a signal of SOS. Although they never found out what the noise could have been at the time, it seemed like one of the most positive signs that the 5-person crew was still out there. Coming in at number 5, Joy Behar. The View co-host compared the Titan disaster to the loss of the Titanic in 1912. She said, quote, "It's interesting because the Titanic itself went down because of human incompetence and stupidity on the part of, according to the movies, hubris, and the same with this. That's the irony of it. They're going to see the same thing is happening to them. It's very sad and scary." Like Joy, many have compared the most recent disaster to the sinking of the Titanic in the way that the events unfolded. It's since been found that the CEO of Ocean Gate, Stockton Rush, repeatedly dismissed safety warnings over the Titan submersible. He was sent various emails from Rob McCallum saying that he was potentially putting his clients at risk and urging him to stop using the sub until it had been certified by an independent agency. Rush responded by saying he was tired of industry players who try to use a safety argument to stop innovation. In the messages, Rush expresses frustration with the criticism of Titan's safety measures. He said, quote, "We have heard the baseless cries of 'you're going to kill someone' way too often. I take this as a serious personal insult." So clearly he was not very welcoming of anything he deemed to be criticism. Coming in at number 4, James Cameron. The director of the 1997 blockbuster Titanic is a diving expert himself and has made 33 trips down to the wreckage himself. Cameron was friends with one of the passengers on board, French diver Paul-Henri Narbiliot. He called out the concern many people had about the safety of the submersible before it went on the expedition. Speaking to ABC News, he said, quote, "A number of the top players in the deep submergence engineering community even wrote letters to the company, saying that what they were doing was too experimental to carry passengers and that it needed to be certified." The filmmaker also compared the loss of the Titan to the sinking of the Titanic and said, quote, "I'm struck by the similarity of the Titanic disaster itself, where the captain was repeatedly warned about ice ahead of his ship, and yet he steamed at full speed into an ice field on a moonless night, and many people died as a result. The Titanic is one of the best known ships in history after its accident in the early hours of April 14th in 1912. More than 1,500 people lost their lives in one of the most tragic sinkings after hitting an iceberg. Only 700 were saved. Until then, the ship was expected to be unsinkable, but it ended up being one of the most remembered accidents when it had only been sailing for a few days. Next up at number 3, David Pogue. The CBS News correspondent was involved in the exact same expedition last year with the Titan, and he revealed something pretty shocking. Apparently on his trip, the vessel got lost on the seafloor for a few hours. Quote, "While we were visiting the Titanic's resting place," he tweeted, "on my expedition last summer, they did indeed get lost for about 5 hours. David wasn't in the submersible himself, but he was in a control room on a ship at the surface at the time. Although unlike Like this one that went missing, the one last year never lost communication with its mothership. He said, quote, they could still send short texts to the sub, but did not know where it was. It was quiet and very tense, and they shut off the ship's internet to prevent us from tweeting. The company claimed it was to keep all channels open in case of a serious emergency. Leading the search was U.S. Coast Guard Admiral John Mager, who spoke to CBS Mornings about the rescue mission. At the time, he said, quote, this is an incredibly complex case. As long as there is opportunity for survival, we will continue to work and bring every resource to bear on the search. He also confirmed that authorities are deploying more vessels in the search and explained that they have an aircraft flying above the water's surface. Coming in at number 2, Adele. The singer was filmed weighing in on the debate during her Vegas residency show on June 23rd, where she asked the audience to vote on whether they'd have gone on board the Ocean Gate sub. In a clip posted on TikTok, she could be heard telling fans the situation was so sad and so tragic. She said, quote, but I have been debating with my friends on our group chats. Everyone's like, I would never do that. But that's a lie, because a lot of people would do that. I want to do a vote, not in mind of what happened, because that was so sad and so tragic, but before this week, how many people would, if they could, would go down to the very, very bottom of the ocean to see the Titanic? Raise your hands. Many of the people in the crowd cheered loudly and raised their arms, meaning they probably would have taken the opportunity to go and visit the wreckage. Given her celebrity status and net worth, Adele is one of the few people in the world who could have quite easily afforded the $250,000 ticket to board the Titan, but she made it quite clear she'd never have been interested. She claimed that she would be too scared to do it because she's, quote, terrified of everything. She also said she genuinely doesn't have an interest in the deep sea or space. And last up in our number 1 spot, Alyssa Farah Griffin. The View co-host weighed in amid search and rescue efforts during her morning talk show's Hot Topic segment on June 21st. She said, quote, we need hope. I'm praying for a miracle. I'm fascinated by this story because while I can't personally relate to wanting to do extreme adventures, my husband is very much like this. Alyssa went on to say that there's something about the human spirit that wants to explore the unknown, but the problem here is this company was cutting corners left and right. Quote, this was basically stitched together. They were using a Game Boy console to guide this thing at the depths of the ocean. I know these folks signed a lot of paperwork, but I hope, however this ends up, there's a massive lawsuit, because they put tons of lives at risk. After an intense 5-day search operation, the devastating outcome of the ill-fated expedition came to light. The discovery of major sections of the submersible has left no hope for the survival of the 5-man crew, who sadly were presumed to have an instantaneous death when the vessel imploded. Well, that's all I have for you today, folks. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.